that's the underlying theory. Now I'm going to turn to the issue of how policy might address the world that we live in using a kind of frame 3 thinking. How do we actually make relevant policy in that world? Okay. Well, if we take on frame 3 thinking, then the foundations of transformative innovation policy must acknowledge the need for inclusivity. Why am I so keen on inclusivity, and why am I so hostile towards technocratic elites? Well, you may have observed around the world or in your own society that all is not well with regard to social cohesion. And it's not merely a matter of income distribution. It's a matter of the degree of understanding and agreement with the agenda for the future, for imaginary for the future. Okay? Is it imaginary for the future in which you have a smaller chance of becoming very wealthy than you do of winning the lottery? Of course, if you're in the right lottery, you might become very wealthy. But this very small chance of social advancement is a problem. And not only, but the feeling that we once did valuable things, things that were valued by society, things that were valued by each other, things that were valued within our communities, we're no longer able to do those things. Okay? This is the impact of globalization. Other people are doing those things now. Now some people say, well, okay, so I'm not sure I really wanted to be an automobile factory worker. It was certainly an opportunity available to me as a young person. Okay? I have friends who spent their entire lives as automobile factory workers. Okay? But there are equally many more people from my generation said, I don't think the automobile industry has a great future. I'm going to go and find some other activity, some other pursuit that I can do that has a greater chance of stability and long-term opportunity. And those of us that pursued that path actually found, well, there wasn't just one thing, because the whole world was changing, and you had to do many different things. So it was much more about gathering a portfolio of skills and capabilities than it was pursuing a career. In any case, we were more adaptable and flexible to those changes than those that we left behind. But those who left behind became a problem. Now, here we have also the question of uncertainty. Okay? And with regard to uncertainty, we have uncertainty about how niche development will occur and whether it will be a successful replacement for the incumbent regime. And we have the possibility for transformative change within the existing regime that I mentioned just a moment ago. And finally, we have the resistance of existing regimes to transformation. All of these things are things that we need to acknowledge in thinking about policy. So what these things imply is that we need to work to anticipate or imagine future opportunities and developments. Bipashe.
So you're talking about that, okay, we have a lot of, we have fundamental uncertainties about, about niche developments and scientific advances. So in such circumstances, how do you then anticipate a second deep transition or the kind of technological developments that you're talking about?
It's very difficult to anticipate the second deep transition. Okay? We don't know, just as much as we don't have a blueprint for it, okay? We don't even have a concept sketch for it, okay? All we can say is it will be more sustainable than our current system, okay? So, but we do know that we will have to make changes in existing socio-technical systems. So we can look in those socio-technical systems, look at the trajectory that they're on, and that's what I mean by anticipation, okay? Look at the alternatives, look to see whether they really offer an alternative that is more sustainable. Imagine their future development as a possibility or potential, and weigh existing versus alternative developments in order to come up with a bias or direction in the policies that we establish. So that's what we mean by anticipation, processes of anticipation. And yes, that's a useful place for a technocratic elite to participate, but it's also a useful site, useful activity for ordinary people to participate in, because they experience these developments. They're part of the society in which they're embedded, they're part of. They should be included as well in attempting to anticipate future developments. And finally, a willingness to engage in conflict, a struggle at a political level, because there will be resistances, there will be barriers, there will be blockages to attempts to change. The existing regime reproduces itself, and by virtue of doing that, accumulates substantial power. And by power, I mean coercive force, often backed by the state, which in many societies have a monopoly on the use of lethal force. Don't underestimate the extent to which struggle can become very difficult. So many people that we're attempting to address are either presently or will in the future be involved as policymakers or advisors to policymakers. And so for them, a key question is, at a programmatic or project level, what does transformative innovation policy mean? Well, first, remember, we don't have a blueprint. So what we need is experimentation. We need to try things out to develop these different anticipations of the future, different understandings of possibilities, in order to assess alternatives with a particular attention, and this is what we're taking from frame 2, to the cumulative learning about the domains in which the experiments are lodged. Second, we need new means of evaluation that are not completely captured by the audit culture, the value for money, the return on investment, but that are oriented towards improving the learning from the experiment so that you can do better the next time when you know more. And we need to develop human capabilities to anticipate, experiment, and evaluate. Here it's important to note that you don't have to start with a clean sheet of paper, the projects that are not transformation-led can be stretched to have greater transformative potential. And some particular criteria for selecting sites or project opportunities are included in this next slide. This is a slide developed earlier in our work, and these 6 criteria or categories are provisional in nature. They're subject to revision and development, but these are ideas that we think are relevant for thinking about changing directionality and improving the transformational potential of projects. To think explicitly about directionality, what social goal you're addressing, the system-level impact of the experiment or project or program, the possibilities for learning and reflexivity, the ability to critically reflect upon what you have experienced. The question, are you just going with the flow, or are you actually taking some exception with the way things are, the business as usual? And inclusiveness. Who exactly are you excluding, and who are you including in this process? And if you think about all of those as kinds of weights to look at in selecting a project or program, or indeed in trying to stretch an existing project or program to have more transformative potential, then I would argue that these are a good starting point, but they can be improved, and we intend to.